Here's some exciting news, everybody. We got more than a dozen states approved a new form of stimulus checks and for the residents this year. That's in the face of record high inflation. In addition to rebates and stimulus check, certain states chose to provide relief by expanding tax credits in other states. Massive budget surpluses automatically caused tax refunds for residents. And this fall, there are several states that will continue to pay with the distribution of relief funds. Healthcare workers, for instance, in Minnesota, are set to receive hundreds of dollars in what is being called hero pay. They'll begin to being distributed this week and continue through the fall. And more than 1 million frontline workers are set to receive payments of $500 beginning this Wednesday, under a new initiative approved by the Minnesota governor. He said, "I'm grateful for the work for Minnesotans that they did to help people across state and stay healthy and safe through the crisis. Frontline workers will be benefiting from the stimulus check. And for those who are eligible for the hero paychecks, the payments will come either via direct deposit or prepaid debit cards. So people are getting stimulus payments, everybody, left and right, and that's good." An estimated 50% of Americans aged 55 and older are living without retirement savings. Early this year, a memo was written by Rick Scott, and he included a proposal for Congress to reauthorize Social Security and other anti-poverty programs every 5 years. According to the Board of Trustees report, Social Security is currently funded until 2035, even without congressional action to expand the program. 84% of benefits and administrative costs are fully funded for the next half century, and 80% are funded for the next 3/4 of a century. An official statement from Senator Sanders' office states that despite Republican claims to the contrary, Social Security is not going broke. Now, New York homeowners are currently receiving some assistance in the form of direct payments. A one-time homeowner tax rebate credit of up to $1,000 is being sent out to qualified households.
And we've discussed earlier in this hearing ways in which Congress can bring down many of the costs, possibly not food and energy, but costs that are really burdening American households, whether it's prescription drugs, the lack of affordable housing.
I think I take your answer as, with all the reasons you've given, that you're not advocating or thinking that price controls or wind profits taxes would have anything to do with fighting inflation. I'm going to yield back my time because I got to go over and vote. I'll put the questions in.
I'm going to go to my colleagues, just so we're clear for the record. Clean Energy for America, passed in this committee, according to independent analysts, will save families $500. Okay. Let's see. Now we have an order of appearance, Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary,
If the tariffs did not serve, really ended up being paid by Americans, not by the Chinese, hurt American consumers and businesses, and we are taking a look at those and looking to be able to address, to reconfigure those tariffs in a way that would be more strategic. So that is something where...
timeline, Madam Secretary, is there any kind of a timeline as to where we can have an additional conversation on that?
I think in the coming weeks, we expect, I can't give you a firm timeline, but with respect to the exclusion process and tariffs, that's something that's under active consideration.
Thank the gentlelady. Let me recognize the gentlelady from California.
The IRS Commissioner Chuck Reddick told lawmakers that before filing season even began, the IRS predicted that returns would be delayed this year, but the backlog should be cleaned before the end of the year. Taxpayers can track the status of the tax refunds using the IRS Where's My Refund tool. In the past, this tool could only be used to track the current tax year, but it was recently upgraded so that users can track this year's and the previous 2 years' refund. The IRS paid out $3.3 billion in interest to taxpayers in fiscal year 2021. That's triple the interest the agency paid in 2015. And President Biden conceded this week that he didn't understand how big of an effect the shutdown of baby formula and recalls would have on the baby formula supply chain until April. His admission came moments after formula manufacturers told him during a White House roundtable that they knew immediately how bad the shortages could get. The White House has previously said it had been working on addressing the shortages since February. And Biden responding to questions about how quickly the administration acted, claimed, "I don't think anybody anticipated the impact of the facility. Once we learned the extent of it and how broad it was, we kicked everything into gear." The National Economic Council director worked to explain later how the situation had devolved into the current crisis. And speaking on CNN, Brian Deese faulted the supply chain as too sluggish in coming to an agreement with the government on steps to reopen the plant, citing the delay as exacerbating the situation. The top advisor said that Biden had been informed of the looming problem once it became clear. Even though the other officials inside the White House have worked on the issue earlier, the IRS is actually taking some big action to help taxpayers across the country. Democrats are criticizing President Biden for not taking enough action to help the American people. Many lawmakers in Congress are pushing the Biden administration to take immediate action on inflation. And according to Democratic Representative Ro Khanna, Joe Biden can do more to fight inflation and needs to take action soon. Ro Khanna criticized Biden on inflation during an interview with the New York Times. He argued that the president's solutions to inflation are not good enough. Khanna stated, "I support the president's effort, but we need a bolder vision and faster action. To meet the moment, Biden should convene an emergency task force empowered to lower prices and address shortages." Representative Khanna went on to say that Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and many others comprise the task force, along with representatives of state and local governments and business leaders. Khanna argues that the task force could actually lower prices by purchasing food and fuel during global price dips and reselling it cheaply to Americans. Biden laid out his three-point plan to
at a time when semiconductor companies are making tens of billions of dollars in profits and paying their executives exorbitant compensation packages. My answer to that question, and I think the American people's answer to that question, is a resounding no. Let's review some recent history about the microchip industry, which I do not hear discussed very often here on the floor. Over the last 20 years, the microchip industry has shut down over 780 manufacturing plants in the United States. Shut down over 780 manufacturing plants in the United States and eliminated 150,000 American jobs while moving most of their production overseas after receiving some $9.5 billion in government subsidies and loans. Got that? They have shut down over 780 plants, thrown 150,000 American workers out on the street as they have gone abroad. In other words, in order to make more profits, these companies took government money and use that money to ship good-paying jobs abroad. And what are we doing about that? You shut down plants in America, you jeopardize the production of microchips here in America, you throw 150,000 workers out on the street, and what is our response? Hey, here's $52 billion. Thank you very much for your patriotism and your respect for American workers. Now, that approach may make sense to some people. Maybe people get a lot of money from the microchip industry in campaign contributions. I don't know. But it sure as hell does not make sense to me. In total, Madam President, it has been estimated that 5